Right, guys, let's start the story and let's set the scene, shall we? So, the story about how I broke my leg and my near-death experience. This happened on June the 11th of June 2020. I was off work. It was my first day off work. I was off work for a 4-day span. My first day off, and I decided I'm gonna go out for a ride on the bike. This was about 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And I was heading up from where I live towards a town called Sheffield. I remember pulling up to the side of the road at one point to check my sat nav because I was going to a certain destination. And when I checked my sat nav, it was 120. And then after this is when the accident actually happened. So at 120, I pulled off on the side of the road, set back off, and I was pulling out of like a junction. So it was like a back road going onto like another main road. And as you do, I pulled up to the junction. I looked both ways, left and right, there was nothing coming. So I looked again, left and right, there was nothing coming. So I begun to pull out of this junction. Now, as I pulled out the junction, I looked right again. As I pull out, I always look right and left again. So I pulled out the junction, I looked right, and all I remember is seeing this silver. It was either silver or grey, and I think it was Ford. Silver or grey Ford. Might have been a Ford Focus. And I just seen it heading towards me with the horn blasting. And for a second, it was like the whole world froze. Time froze. Everything just froze. All the cars around me stopped as if they knew it was going to happen. And his horn is just blasting. I'm just so focused on his car for like a split second, and the sound in my ears is very like blurred. And after a split second, I kind of looked and I was like, okay, this may be my time. Like, maybe this is a sign. Have I lived too much? Is this the end? Or is this just a block in the road? After I froze for a second and realised what was actually happening, I was like, right, I'm in the middle of the road, I'm on the bike, and there's a car coming towards me. What do? I can't go backwards because there's a car behind me, and there's no reverse on bikes. People know you have to go back with your feet and push it back. Or the option is to go forward. Now, if I go forward, there's trees on the other side in front of me. So like, right, this is what I'm going to do. I was in the first gear, so I just popped out the clutch and I just put full revs on. And my goal was to get away from this car, and I said to myself, if I end up in the trees and hit a tree, I'd rather that than be hit by this car. So I put full revs and I started going forward, and this car, so I'm going forward, and this car also come and he swerved right. Instead of stopping, or well, he did try stopping, but he slid. Instead of like trying to swerve left down the road that was empty that it could swerve down, he swerved right and hit me directly in the leg. Like, didn't hit the bike. It was a leg sandwich between, my leg was sandwiched between the car and the bike. And then instant pain, and then all I remember was hitting my head off the car, and I went flying. The bike went flying, I went flying. So here's me, like, basically flying through the air. Meanwhile, my leg's wobbling, so I know it's broken at this point, and it's painful. And then, just my luck, as cars coming from the other side, And I ended up, this car stops, but I ended up flying, and I ended up landing on this other car, on the windscreen, and bounced off that onto the floor. Now, at this point, all I remember at this point is flying through the air, and the next minute, I hit the car, and I black out. Like, next minute I wake up in the hospital. In fact, no, I don't wake up in the hospital, I wake up in the ambulance. So, I wake up in the ambulance, and they tell me what's happened. And I'm in that much pain, I'm like, I just want to go to sleep. And they're telling me you can't go to sleep, because if I go to sleep, there's a big risk of possibly losing my life. Me being the type of person I am, I was selfish. I was thinking about myself, my pain. So, I closed my eyes, and I remember, I closed my eyes, and then the next minute, I heard voices, like a nurse talking to somebody on a phone or something. So I opened one eye, and the nurse was on the phone to my friend that rung me. I was meant to be meeting him at some point, and he rung me, and she was like telling him, I've been in an accident, this, that and the other, there's a possibility I'm not gonna survive. I'm not waking up, this, that and the other. And I hear him, this is the hardest part. So, I hear my friend screaming on the phone, bear in mind. So at this point I knew I had to open my eyes. So I opened my eyes, and the nurse was like, he's awake, he's alive, he's here, type of thing. Which was a relief. And the next minute, I spoke to my friend, and he went because we had to work on my leg. He went. I was in this hospital bed, in a big room with loads of nurses, doctors, orthopedics, anything you can say, everybody you can think of in a hospital. Every role was there. Put me on an IV drip with ketamine. Now, if you don't know if nobody knows what ketamine is like a horse tranquilizer. Is basically what it is. And it's a drug that they give you in hospital to take away the pain, and it knocks you loopy. Well, they give me ketamine, the next minute I'm knocked out again. I wake up again, like, must have been hours later, maybe an hour later. They say, your bone's fixed. Your leg's back together, your bone's in position of what it can be. They give me in a little, like, bandage cast type thing. Now, I wake up, and I remember the room was spinning. And I remember just seeing all these. This is the funny part, chat. And that's gonna sound crazy, but listen. I woke up on ketamine, and I were hallucinating, the room was spinning this and the other. And all I could see around me was women at the time. There was a couple of men, right? But there was pushing me along the corridor to a seat, they were taking me for a CT scan or something. I was saying like some random ass shit to these women. Like, there was one woman, she was like pushing my trolley, she was at the side of my trolley thing, the bed. And I looked at her, and I remember this so well, I don't know why. She was like, blonde hair, like a slim, curvish body type of thing. And she was in like a blue suit or whatever it was. And I remember saying to this woman, are you a gift from God for me surviving? I'm gonna marry you someday. One of them was like, the doctors were like, are you okay? How are you feeling? And my reply on ketamine was, doctor, I'm on top of the fucking world right now. I'm like, I am the highest point of the fucking mountain, but nobody can reach me. The world tried taking me away, but my guardian angels get me here. I'm on top of life. Nobody can beat the coops. I was in hospital for 3 weeks. The first 3 days after my operation, I come round to the recovery room and I wouldn't wake up. Well, I was in and out of it. Like my breathing, well, in and out of it. So they had to put me in my own little room, and they had to give me what they call an oxygen hood. Now, you can get the oxygen mask, but this was like a hood. It was basically like a big bag that went over your head and zipped up, and you just breathe oxygen in it. And this was awful. I was in this hood for 3 days, chap. I couldn't take it off at all. I couldn't unzip it. Only time I could unzip it is to eat or take a drink, and then I had to zip it right back up. So them 3 days went by pretty quick because I slept through most of it. And then I ended up going to an actual ward. And on this ward, it was a brilliant ward. Lots of student nurses, which, come on, for you people that know, I'm on this ward, and the doctors and everything like that are asking me all the details, what happened, this and the other. So I tell them everything, and then for the pain, they put me on another IV drip, and they put me on morphine, and I had like a button. And every time I had pain, I had to click this morphine button, and it injected morphine into me, and took the pain away. I was on that for the longest time. In the hospital, I remember seeing multiple other people. On the ward, I was on the ward with 5 other people, and all of them kept asking me. All of them had broken bones on that ward because it was the bone ward. I remember when I was telling the story to the nurses, these people were like, out loud, they were like, "Holy shit! I think I've gone through the worst by just breaking one bone while doing a daily activity. This guy nearly died and come back." They said that to me, like, "Dude, you nearly died and come back." In fact, you did, basically, because you wouldn't wake up. I was like, and not only that, you broke your entire leg. Like, my leg was in half. It was an open wound, an open fracture to my tibia and fibula. The tibia was broken just above the knee. No, just below the knee. And the fibula was broken just above the ankle. It was all open through my leg. They ended up cutting 30mm off the bone, so now my leg's 30mm shorter. When I get my shoes now, I have to send them off to the hospital for them to send off to get raising. And now, if you look at this shoe. It's pretty normal, the sole, right? Like, the sole is pretty normal. But if you look at this one, the sole has got rays in it by 30mm. So that when I do walk, I'm not limping onto one side. About a couple of days later, I ended up going back in for another operation. They put me to sleep. They put an X-Fix, which is basically like metal scaffolding type thing. They put an X-Fix on my leg to hold the bone in place. And they also took a skin graft from my upper right thigh to go over the open wound. And they fastened what was like a suction pump to it. So I had this X-Fix on for 3 weeks. The 3 weeks are in there. And the skin graft was on, and the suction pump, so weird, it felt so weird feeling. It was like, basically it was just sucking all the dead shit inside my leg out, so it helping it heal. And I ended up, before I left, I ended up having another skin graft, because after about 2 weeks, after about a week and a half, I got news that the first skin graft had failed completely. It wasn't working. So they had to go in for another operation, and they had to take a skin graft from my left upper thigh. Yeah, so they took a skin graft from my left upper thigh. Bear in mind I was awake for this. I just had some kind of pain relief thing. So what this felt like, imagine somebody, like, I don't know, peeling back your skin, imagine someone peeling back your skin and cutting it with like a saw. So it basically felt like someone was sawing my skin away. And anyway, I did this second skin graft. By the time the end of the 3 weeks, the other week and a half, which led to 3 weeks, this skin graft had actually fully healed. It was 99%. So it took as it should. And I had multiple physiotherapy sessions while I was in there. For a long time they had me walking on like a frame. It was like a Zimmer, it was basically a Zimmer frame. And I actually ended up going to being discharged with this X-Fix and Zimmer frame. Because I couldn't get upstairs yet, I had to go to my nan's bungalow. And I stopped there for the longest of time. For quite a bit. A couple of weeks maybe, something like that. And then I ended up going back into hospital for another operation because the bone had set a bit, so they wanted to take off the X-Fix and put on what they call an Ilizarov cage. Now, Ilizarov cage is basically a big metal cage that goes around your leg, and they ended up putting one of them on. Now, to put that cage on, it was the worst, because they had to numb me from waist down, and to do this numb, they had to put an injection into my spine, and it must have took 15-20 attempts trying to get this injection in, because you have to put the injection right through your spine. Like, you have to find a little gap in your spine and put it through the gap. And obviously I'm no small lad, I'm a big lad, so I bent over on the side of the bed while they're trying to do this. And it took them 16 attempts to get this in. And I finally got it in, and then it numbed me from waist down, and I ended up getting this cage on. Now, as soon as I got released from the and I was back on the ward, 20 minutes after being on the ward, I was up and walking to the toilet, and the nurse was like, "What are you doing? Like, you've just did a spinal injection, you shouldn't be able to walk." At all. And I could walk quite easily. And they're like, "Be careful," and I'm just like, why? This is so easy. Why are they making it out like I shouldn't be able to walk? So, actually turned out that you shouldn't actually be able to walk after a spinal injection, because there was somebody else on there that had one and they couldn't walk. So, I must have, whether I got over it quick, I don't know, but I could walk. They ended up then teaching me with crutches, and I was on crutches for a long time. And they kept me in for 3 days after that, and physiotherapy sessions while I was in there with crutches, taught me how to go up and down stairs and everything like that. So then I ended up coming back home, here where I am now, with crutches, which was a relief. Well, like, finally, I'm home, I'm where I want to be, and I'm not in hospital. Because the hospital drove me crazy, chat. I mean crazy. Like, the 3 weeks I were in the, before I got the frame on, it was sleepless nights. Nights just absolute tears all night. Like, thinking all the worst. I've let people down, this, that and the other. Why am I stuck in here? Why did I do this? Why did I do that type of thing? And it was in the hospital where I started with, where I actually got diagnosed with depression. And they gave me what they call sertraline to help it. So, obviously when I ended up getting out of hospital, that were a big relief for all the depression shit. Which, I still suffer now, but it was a hospital that triggered it, I think, and the accident, and now it's not as bad. And now, I was home, and I was going for weekly checkups. Weekly physiotherapy sessions to work on my leg, do some gym stuff and try and strengthen it. And then every other 4 weeks I was going for a checkup on the leg, which was like an x-ray, and speak to my consultant, the orthopedic. And this must have been going on for the longest. But recently, as most of you know, I had the news that my leg is healed. It looks to be fully healed on one of my x-rays. So they gave it 3 weeks. They said, right, he's fully healed, but we'll give it another 3 weeks or so. Oh, no, not another 3 weeks. We'll get another 3 sessions x-rays, which were every 4 weeks. So after another 4 weeks, went for the second one. Looked the same. After the other 4 weeks, went for the third x-ray, and it looked the same. Fully healed. So I said, right, it's fully healed. Here's what we'll do. We can now remove the frame from your leg. Now this was so painful. I swear to God, this was painful. So the frame was like held together. Was like a big metal frame around my leg, and there were like bolts holding the rings together, and then the wires going through my leg from one side to the other. So they untightened all the bolts and took all the rings off, and then there were just the wires. Now when it comes to the wires, they ended up putting me on oxygen or something. No, my bad. When they took it all, the wires out, they put me on gas and air. And even though we're on gas and air, and I was like so high off of gas and air, I could legit feel them yanking out the wires out of my leg with pliers. Like, I could feel them pulling it to my skin and then yanking it with pliers through my leg, through the bone and everything. And I felt this multiple times because I had like 16 of these wires going through my leg. The most it hurt is when they were pulling the wires out that were near my joints, like up near my kneecap and down near my ankle. And luckily within like 10 minutes it was over, but God, it was so painful, and afterwards it was so painful and there was blood like everywhere. They ended up putting me in a bandage and sending me home that same day. When I went home, as some of you may know, I got it took off, the frame took off New Year's Eve. That's it. I shouldn't have remembered that because it was New Year's Eve. It was near the start of New Year. New Year's Eve got it took off. Went home. Now, New Year's Eve night, I was walking from the bathroom to my bedroom, which must be 10 steps. I was walking with sticks, said walking sticks now instead of crutches. And I took a step and I heard this crack. And immediately I was like, I knew, I kind of stumbled, and then I knew something was wrong. So I went, laid down, rested it, had it raised. The next day I went to the ER, or A&E, whatever you want to call it. Was in there all freaking day. Had x-rays. Looked at the x-rays. My tibula, the main bone, had refractured in the same place. So I was like, oh, fuck's sake, what does this mean now? And this was now the hospital closest to me, which is Barnsley Hospital, which is ridiculous, terrible hospital. I hate it because most of the people were there haven't got a clue. Whereas the one before was like the more professional hospital for that stuff. It was the Northern General in Sheffield. But anyways, I went there and it had re-broke. They put me on a ward in a bed with my leg just there broken. They didn't do anything for it, they didn't put anything on it. They were just like, right, it's broken, put you on a bed, put you in a little thingy. An orthopedic come in to see me and they were like, why has this guy not got a cast on if he's got broken leg? Why has they just left him like this? So I ended up going back down to the A&E department, or ER department. They ended up putting me a back slab on, which is basically, it's a cast, but it's a half a cast. It's a cast that goes just up the back of your leg and above your knee. And then the front is just a bandage to hold your leg in place. I was in there for a couple of days with this on. And again within, like, next day, on crutches, walking with the physio people. Well, every day, walking on crutches with physio people. 3 days later, that's it, I got released. And now, again, I'm back home, and I have this slab on, and I'm currently just waiting for my appointment, because I originally treated at Northern General in Sheffield. I'm now just waiting for an appointment to go back to the Northern General in Sheffield on the 21st to get an update and see what they can do, see what they're going to do with my leg this time, because I don't think they'll put another cage on it, because it works. They said it fully healed and then it broke again, so they'll probably just plate it and screw it or whatever. But yeah, that is well, what happened. It's pretty freaking nuts how I went from on death's door to almost losing my life, and now I'm here in person telling the story. Now, the reason I want to tell this story, for anybody knowing, is not just for documentation purposes, but also for other people going through the similar situation. Because as much as we hate to admit it, chat, there's people out there right now that are going through the similar situation, whether they've just broke a bone today walking down the street or in an accident, or they've almost lost life and they're in hospital. Everybody's going through it. Somewhere in the world, someone's going through this shit. And if my story helps people get through this, then I'm happy enough to tell it, and I believe it will if it gets to the right people. Thank you everybody, all my online friends, from fellow streamers to the people I play with on Xbox. Everybody in the online world that has supported me through this and continued to support, and have continued to support me through my recovery. I appreciate you all. And this is my story. This is how I almost lost my life, basically on death's door. This is how I broke my leg and how I recovered from it all, and thankfully how I'm here today to tell the story. Been Bearded Coops, and I'm out, guys. Appreciate you all. Much love. Take care, guys.